All right, welcome back. This is going to be part 26. Part 26 of Dinosaurs and Man. And we are continuing with the topic of Behemoth. Behemoth that is mentioned in Job chapter 40. And last time that we were together, we were talking about the first physical aspect of Behemoth that is mentioned in the Bible. We can kind of get an idea of the description of this animal and kind of tie it into what we may think it is. And last we were together, I was showing you the fact that some of the Bibles that you'll see will say that Behemoth is supposed to be either an elephant or a hippopotamus, an elephant or a hippopotamus. And though the description of a big belly does match those two animals, you're going to see as we go on that there are some differences, what they say in the Bible to these two animals. And that's what we're going to talk about in this one here. But just remember that the footnotes, if you'll notice, this is a picture of a Bible and its footnote. It says supposed to be either the elephant or the hippopotamus. Now remember, guys, the footnotes is added by the person that was putting the Bible together. And so, and I'm going to tell you right now, I do have some Bibles. Matter of fact, let me go ahead and get one, and I'll just show you the one that I have. This right here is the Henry Morris Study Bible, the Henry Morris Study Bible. Now, I don't do my regular studies with this Bible here. I use it to reference. Because Henry Morris is a big creationist. And so there's a lot of creation type stuff through this thing. And so, Henry Morris has been called the father of modern creationism. And so, I was introduced to this Bible by another creationist years ago, and so I finally just invested in the money and got one. And so it's a very good good Bible, and it's got some really good notes on it. But guys, the footnotes that he has in there are not inspired scripture. They are, even though that I do trust Henry Morris and stuff like that, I will just look at his footnotes to see if I can kind of get a validation on maybe an interpretation that I'm getting. And so I will try to get somebody else that is getting that same interpretation. And so not everything that I have studied, sometimes when I look at something, I see something that I've never heard anybody else actually mention. And so, it doesn't mean that I'm getting some new revelation. It's just that maybe I just haven't run across another person that has had that same interpretation. And so, but I try to do the best that I can to interpret what we're seeing here, so that way you guys can get a good understanding of what's in here. And so I don't want to lead anybody astray. So anytime that it's just an opinion on my part, I'll say it's just an opinion. But going back to the scripture here, last we were together, we were talking about the Job chapter 40, verse 16, where it says, his strength is in his loins, and the force is in the navel of his belly. Now, notice that the strength is in his loins. Now, what he's talking about here is talking about the leg area. And so, let's just say, I'm going to take my brachiosaur here. I'm going back to my brachiosaur. You'll see him while we're talking about this. He'll be about behind me. But we're talking about the legs, guys. When we talk about loins, we're talking about legs. Remember when I was talking about that one scripture where the Lord said, gird up your loins, gird up your loins? That's the legs. That's the leg region where you take the robe and you tie it up so you would have mobility. You would have mobility. And so, but the loins, we're talking about this area here. We're talking about the legs. So that's what he's talking about. The strength is in his loins. The strength is in his loins. Now, of course, the brachiosaur we were talking about the brachiosaur before, where it means armed lizard, armed lizard. Now, the legs in the front are taller than the legs in the back. You see that? And an apatosaur, I got an apatosaur right here. This is an apatosaurus. See, the apatosaur, the back legs are taller than the front legs. And so that's a difference, or one of the differences between an apatosaur and a brachiosaur. And you'll see this apatosaur sitting on the shelf back here behind me when I'm doing my videos. And so, but let's go back to the scripture here. What we're going to talk about in this one is Job chapter 40, verse 17. We're just going right down the verses. Now it says, he moveth his tail like a cedar. He moveth his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together. What in the world are they talking about? Let's go to the tail. He moves his tail like a cedar. Now, when you think of a tail, you think of a tail and you think of a cedar. When you think of a cedar tree, you're thinking of something big, long. And so look at this picture right here. Does this look like a big tree? When you see an elephant moving his tail, does that remind you of a tree? Does an elephant move his tail like a cedar tree? I don't think so, guys. I don't think so. It's just dangling there. What about a hippopotamus? Does that remind you of a big cedar tree? Does that look like a cedar tree? No, I don't think so. He barely wagged that thing at all. But how about a brachiosaur? How about a brachiosaur? Would that tail remind you of a cedar tree? I think so. I think the brachiosaur would move his tail like a cedar tree. It would be a great big, you're talking about something long, real long. And so now we're starting to see some differences with the elephant and the hippopotamus. That's not reminding you, their tails don't remind you of a cedar tree, but the brachiosaur tail does remind you of a cedar tree. Now, let's go to something else here. Let's move on down. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together. Now, I went into several concordances, and the popular definition, and we're going to talk about another definition that I found also, but the one of the more popular definitions is that the sinews are talking about tendons. They're talking about tendons, and of his stones, we're talking about that thigh area, the thighs. That's what we're talking about. Now, I did have somebody. It's been some time back. I want to say it's been a couple of years ago. They were trying to debate with me about Behemoth being a reptile. And he said that reptiles, he was taking this scripture here about the sinews of his stones, and he was saying that reptiles, he was taking that to interpret that it's talking about testicles on the male animals. And so he said that reptiles don't have testicles. And so now one of the concordances that I went into did say testicles. Now, it is interesting to note, if you'll notice on the screen here, I went into the Britannica and looked up the body parts, the anatomy of reptiles, and it said that both the ovaries and testes lie in the body cavity near the kidneys. Now, this would be higher up than the lower part where we would commonly think that the testes would be, or the testicles would be on your mammal animals, but they do have testicles. They actually do. And so, or testes is what is referred to here in the Britannica, but they do have it. And but at any rate, the sinews of his stones being wrapped together, we're talking about tendons. We're talking about tendons. And we're talking about the physical trait of this animal, the strength of his animal. It's talking about the loin area. There being a lot of strength, and we're still going to go deeper into some of the physical characteristics on the next video. Guys, let's go ahead and we'll stop right here. On the next video, we're going to continue on. But just for time's sake, I was looking at my slides, and it just seemed the portion that we just went over was a good way. We'll just keep it bite size in this general area, because the next one I'm going to be showing you more pictures, and we're going to be going through some more information. And so that way I could give this. To give the scriptures the justice it needs to be given and the interpretation that we can give it, I just want to make sure I break them up the best that I can. I've been able to do, but I really do hope that you guys have been learning something from this. But I'm telling you right now, we're still just touched the hem of the garment on this whole presentation. There's a lot of really neat stuff and some really neat people and other websites that I'm going to be sharing with you guys that you can further your knowledge. And that way you can have an answer for those that ask the question of the hope that's within us. And so, but you guys take care. Love you. Bye-bye.